All right, let's give this a whirl. Looks like we still got a black screen, and we're in. There we go. It's working. Trying something new today. Let's see how it goes. Gonna wait a second. All right, cool. I'm gonna test the chat. All right. Probably no one's going to tune in for this, but that's okay. We're trying something new today, trying to motivate myself to make more videos more quickly. So by forcing myself to live stream news highlights that I think are worth talking about, might force me to not worry so much about an edit or putting together B-roll and something fancy. So yeah, here I am talking to myself, hopefully talking to you after you decide to watch the VOD or something like that. But here we go. Today, or this week, Sony has made a pretty big mistake. A little bit of an oopsies. And I'd say it's kind of a big oopsies, actually. And it's kind of a frustrating one, and one that I think breeds a lot of skepticism among the just general audience of people looking forward to new games and things like that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's jump into it. Over here, we've got a pretty big VGC day today, but let's take a look. Oh man, nope, that is the wrong page. This thing really does keep flipping on me. Hold on, let me flip it over. We've got let's switch this over. Oh yeah, this should be right. Just displaying the wrong thing. It was this before. We're going to close that. All right. Well, that's odd. Already. Technical difficulties. You got to love it. Let's see. If we change it to this. Change it back. There we go. Now, hopefully there wasn't anything too crazy. I'm double checking to make sure my stream key or anything wasn't displayed. Looks like it was all covered up. Nice. All right. Cool. As I was saying, kicking off the news today, it looks like Sony has made a pretty big mistake. And that is, of course, misquoting or basically completely making up a quote from one of their top game developers. That's right. If we click on over here to VGC, you'll see this headline by Jordan Midler, which reads, Sony apologizes to Neil Druckmann following, quote, heavily edited, unquote, interview. The subhead here reads, Druckmann posted his unedited comments to social media following backlash. Sony has removed an interview with Neil Druckmann due to what it calls significant errors and inaccuracies, which is wild because you would think if you interview your own developer, you have complete control of the messaging there, and you would make sure that it is the most honest and straightforward read of what they said instead of having significant errors and inaccuracies. I think we can get into it, but this is part of the reason why the games media is important, why media in general and journalists in general are important, and we're going to get into it. To kind of jump around a little, though, to start off with, there was this quote going around from Neil Druckmann, which basically said that, gosh, where's the one? A little unprepared, I guess. There's this big quote where, right here at the top of the headline here, this one's by Tom Ivan, also on VGC. They kind of track this story throughout the past few days, so it's a good reference point. But basically, this headline reads, Neil Druckmann says new Naughty Dog title, quote, could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming, end quote. This blew up on gaming Twitter and like social media, where a lot of people were just kind of saying this was kind of a laughable notion. It's like he got a lot of heat for this, like saying that the next Naughty Dog game could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming. There were other people who were saying like, well, Naughty Dog is known for pushing the limits of what the medium can do. So if any studio could, it's them. But then other people fired back saying Naughty Dog is infamous for like recreating cinematic games, like cinematic style storytelling in games. So, and Hellblade 2 just having come out, people kind of over that type of experience, I guess, or when you fly too close to the sun, I think in the way that Hellblade 2 did, then you get a lot of criticism about like what's the game part of this. If you're kind of just pushing on the stick every once in a while to see like cool cinematics play out, it might as well be more of a passive media, right? Like a show or a movie or something like that, if you're not actually requiring much of your players. Now, I think you could go back and forth on that, but to get to the issue at hand here, Neil Druckmann says new Naughty Dog title could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming, basically saying like the next Naughty Dog game will kind of like redefine AAA games forever. That came from this special event that Sony hosted, the Creative Entertainment Vision. And this was a weird event with a lot of kind of like weird marketing stuff. There's like a lot of previs concepts. There's like floating holograms and like made up video game controllers displayed in this thing. And there was an interview basically with Neil Druckmann, you know, being the most prolific and recognizable game creator who co-directed the Last of Us show, who's well known now in media. An interview from Neil Druckmann that went up on the Sony website. As I mentioned in the other headline, that interview has been pulled down. Of course, here's the message here. It says, in re-reviewing our recent interview with Naughty Dog's Neil Druckmann, we have found several significant errors and inaccuracies that don't represent his perspective and values, including topics such as animation, writing, technology, AI, and future projects. We apologize to Neil for misrepresenting his words and for any negative impact his interview might have caused him and his team. In coordination with Naughty Dog and SIE, that's Sony Interactive Entertainment, we have removed the interview. And this is wild. This is coming from your parent company. And not just to get like one quote or one sentence wrong, but to acknowledge that there was error and inaccuracies in animation, writing, technology, AI, and future projects is a lot. That is just like, how does this happen, right? Is the question that I have. So you're probably wondering, well, what did he say? And what was posted in the interview, and what did he really say? Well, things kind of blew up on May 24th. That was a few days ago when Neil Druckmann posted that. He didn't actually say the things that were in the interview. Of course, he took a screenshot of it. He said, "This is not quite what I said," a short thread, and then here's kind of the exact quote from the interview, which reads, the question says, "Could you share a personal vision or dream project you hope to see realized in the future of entertainment?" And the response here is, "I've been lucky to work on several dream projects and I'm currently excited about a new one, which is perhaps the most thrilling yet. There's a growing appreciation for gaming that transcends all age groups, unlike when I was growing up. This shift is highlighted by our venture into television with The Last of Us, which I hoped would bridge the gap between games and non-gamers. The show's success has spotlighted gaming, illustrating the rich, immersive experience it offers. This visibility excites me not only for one current project, but for the broader potential of gaming to captivate a global audience." It's a mouthful. This is a lot, and nobody really talks like this unless they're totally media trained, which isn't out of the question, right? This happens with high-profile game developers all the time. They're trained on specific talking points to say certain key phrases and words. The things that stick out to me, particularly now, in hindsight, looking back, it says, this shift is highlighted by our venture into television with The Last of Us. Like that kind of phrasing there is a little weird, and we'll look at the other one to see just kind of how true it is. The show's success has spotlighted gaming, illustrating the rich, immersive experience it offers. This visibility excites me not only to our current project, but for the broader potential of gaming to captivate a global audience. Now, this is another thing of like that particular line there is a lot of corporate speak to me. That seems like corporate jargon. Yeah, in words like transcends, like definitely kind of corporate jargon or like edited. There was other words here that kind of got edited, I'm guessing. And I'm going to show you exactly what the quote was because Neil posted the transcript. So yeah, and the part that really got torn apart is that the next game that Naughty Dog's working on could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming. A very, very big claim. Honestly, you know, if someone from Naughty Dog is claiming that, your ears are going to kind of perk up, but I think a lot of people call BS. And rightfully so, because, as we've been talking about, here is the full unedited thing. Neil Druckmann posted also on May 24th. This is the end of last week, so I think a lot of people missed it. In editing my rambling answers in my recent interview with Sony, some of my words, context, and intent were unfortunately lost. Well, here's the full long rambling answer for the final question about our future game. So Neil posted this thing at the beginning of last week, and Sony responded basically, they basically responded this morning, I think is what it was. Oh, it's hard to blow this stuff up on Twitter for you guys. Sorry. Let me get back out of here. So, so you'll see some things that correlate here. I've been very lucky in that I've got the chance to make several of my dream projects. So that was absolutely paraphrased in here. I've been lucky to work on several dream projects. So you can already tell there's like significant editing going on here. And it's not just editing, right? They didn't just reorganize the things that he said in this larger chunk. They've recontextualized it. They've summarized it and recontextualized it. They're putting words in there that weren't said. I'm going to read this whole thing, and I know it's going to be boring, but just to give you the kind of idea of what's going on here. And let's see. I'll show you. So here, let's start at the top. Well, I've been very lucky in that I've already had that. I got the chance to make several of my dream projects. I'm working on a new one right now, and it's maybe the most excited I've been for a project yet. I can't talk about it or our bosses will get very mad at me. This part obviously left out of the truncated version. And I guess in general, there's something happening now that I think is very cool, which is there's a new appreciation for gaming that I've never seen before. So basically this chunk up here to all the way down here gets summarized into what he said about like this sentence about since he was a kid. And this part that says there's a growing appreciation for gaming that transcends all age groups, unlike when I was growing up. So this, I don't think this is a sentence ever said. Let's look for the word transcends in here anywhere. Click there on there. There we go. So just like he says here, which is there's a new appreciation for gaming that I've never seen before, like when I was growing up. So there's the edit. Gaming was more of a kid's thing. Now it's actually for everyone, but it's like if you're a gamer, you know about the potential of games, and non-gamers, they don't really know what they're missing out on. But my hope was when we made The Last of Us as a TV show that we could change that. So all of this is what gets truncated into that word transcends. And why I became so involved with it, I wanted so badly for it to be good because I wanted this to happen, which is like someone who will watch the show and really like it and fell in love with those characters the way that we have fallen in love with those characters and their story, and then realize at the end, wait, that's based on a video game, and then go in and check out the game and just see the wealth of narratives and everything that's happening in games. So now I feel like there's kind of a spotlight on gaming, and Fallout just came out, and that's a big success for Amazon, and I find that really exciting, not because games need to be movies or they need to be TV shows, but I think it just kind of opens the eyes of a bunch of people that just weren't aware of the kind of experiences that exist in games. I think right now we've hit a tipping point where it's about to take off, where people realize, oh my God, there's all these incredible moving experiences in games. So I'm not only excited for this game that we're making, and it's something really fresh for us, but I'm also excited to see how the world reacts to it. Because of The Last of Us and the success of the show, people even outside of gaming are looking at us to see what it is that we put out next. So this is he's kind of getting close to what that original quote was, or what everyone thought the original quote was, but he never says it. I'm very excited to see what the reaction for this thing will be, and I've already said too much about it. I'll stop there. So you're asking me for my dream projects. I've been very lucky to have worked on my favorite games with incredible collaborators, and I'm very thankful for them. He stops himself. He doesn't go all the way there. He doesn't say, specifically, he doesn't say what he was getting a lot of flack for, that The Last of Us could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming. Now, on this interview, there's no mention of it, the original one, there's no mention of the editing taking place. So when you see something like this, and when people who follow gaming news, like I do, see something like this, you automatically assume that this is a direct quote from Neil Druckmann. There's no reason to believe otherwise. This sentence right here, there's a growing appreciation for gaming that transcends all age groups, completely made up. Never said that. This sentence at the end, it could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming, completely made up. Never said that. And now if you have an editorial team, like this doesn't even fly on YouTube, this kind of stuff. You can't just make up quotes and then credit it to somebody famous, especially somebody famous who works for you. So Sony really, really goofed this one. That's why they pulled their interview. And so that's basically why he was saying he got misquoted by his own parent company, and this is just a bad look. It makes everybody distrust the process. It makes everyone distrust Sony. Like whatever Neil Druckmann has to say in an official capacity on the PlayStation blog from here on out is going to be heavily scrutinized. Everything from here on out, even though this original interview didn't happen on the PlayStation blog, which I know has their own editorial team, standards and practices, this type of thing makes you question the whole company, makes you question every single thing that there is when it comes to their marketing and interviews. And all of this, right, this presentation where this came from, which was from the Creative Entertainment Vision kind of presentation. That was all for like investor level people to get excited about the future of PlayStation and the future of mostly the future of Sony and what they had planned going forward. So, man, I can't imagine somebody letting this slide through like this. It doesn't make sense. I don't know why you would do this. Just like make up stuff for, and especially without an approval, right? It seems clear like that Neil Druckmann was out here on Twitter saying like, hey, I didn't say this. They clearly didn't like get his permission to say, hey, we kind of like summarize some of the things you said. And even then, I don't think that's okay. I mean, sometimes you do get those kind of PR statements that are probably heavily edited, and then they go back and forth between the kind of person who's responding and that sort of thing. And I think you'd see that sort of thing at like a Jim Ryan level, right? But not somebody who's been in games for so long, been making games for so long, been the face of their company for so long, doing tons of interviews with the games press and things like that, kind of understanding the big no-nos here. So that getting past like any level of scrutiny at Sony is just a huge red flag. And of course, all of this comes before the State of Play that's happening this Thursday, which is going to have some games. If you didn't hear about this, this is the PlayStation blog. State of Play returns this Thursday. This kind of dropped today, I believe. And it says, State of Play is back. Tune in for live updates on PlayStation 5 and PSVR 2 titles, which is surprising to me because the last time we heard about PSVR 2 was that they actually stopped manufacturing them, right? They're trying to sell through the stock that they have out there in retail spaces now and in warehouse spaces now, I'm assuming, digital retailer spaces. And plus a look at PlayStation Studios games arriving later this year. So yeah, this PSVR 2 drop here is very fascinating to me. Maybe they have some games in the works. Maybe they have some games ported over. We also kind of heard some rumors and leaks about a PlayStation VR 2 adapter that would allow it to work with PC games, or work with your PC, which would be a very, very important piece of kit for that headset. It makes that headset all of a sudden worth a lot more. It becomes more valuable. A headset that you can probably get, I guess at this point, not too much more cheaply than others that work on PC. You've got MetaQuest 3 out there now, like I think kind of at a similar price point without a wire. That's going to be hard to beat. But if you've already got a PSVR 2, an adapter that lets you play, like, for example, the Valve game Half-Life Alyx, that would, encourage a lot of people to pick up their PSVR 2 again. And maybe they even plug into their PlayStation 5 and buy a few games. Who knows? The description for this week's State of Play says, the 30-minute show features 14 titles and begins May 30th at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern. And it's going to be on YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok, etc. And then just kind of information about co-streaming. So nothing about this being specifically partner-oriented or having any first-party drops. We are getting close to showcase season, summertime. PlayStation in the past has kind of been a wild card for me. Sometimes they have a big presentation in June, and then that, for a while slipped to August, then to September, then they skipped one year entirely. And now it's kind of, hands up in the air. Who knows? They had recent corporate shift, and they now have dual CEOs over there between Herman Hulst and then also like somebody from like a Japanese, somebody from the Japanese side at Sony on the business side of things, I think on the business development side or biz tech side. And so they're going to co-run PlayStation. I don't know if we're going to get appearances from both of them. We've certainly seen Herman Hulst, kind of being the face of Guerrilla Games in the past. And then kind of when he moved to his new position to head all the PlayStation studios, we'd seen him in other presentations and things like that. So maybe they'll just use him as the front man going forward. But should be interesting to see the State of Play. I always set my expectations fairly low for them because it doesn't always seem like the place for big announcements. They kind of use them as like mini Nintendo Directs in some cases, and then every once in a while they'll have like one big game that shows. You're looking at 30 minutes, so the most you can have at a short length is probably like 15 games with like 2-minute trailers, but probably what you'll get is some stuff with like 4 to 5 minute presentations and then a couple of games sprinkled in here and there. Not quite sure what to expect of this one, but let me know in the comments if you have a good guess. All right, let's move on to our next story. Okay. For our next story, we've got some news from CD Projekt Red. This story on Game Rant, written by Dan Anirio. reads, CD Projekt Red creative director may be teasing Cyberpunk, or maybe teasing more Cyberpunk 2077. So there was basically, I believe, an investor meeting. It says in a Q1 2024 earnings report, the CD Projekt Group revealed that it had 0 developers working on Cyberpunk 2077 as of April 30th. And we're going to get into why. CD Projekt Red, the company's development arm, has shifted its focus to the popular RPG sequel, codenamed Projekt Orion. That's a game, I believe, that's being developed here in the U.S. They are building a studio out here, I think in the Midwest or on the East Coast, Boston, I believe. Cyberpunk 2077 game director Gabe Amontegelo said in an interview that was published in March. So yeah, they basically picked up shop. They took a bunch of developers from Poland and hired a bunch of people out in Boston. And now they've started basically another, it's like a satellite studio, essentially for CD Projekt Red to work on Cyberpunk 2077 sequel. Now, according to creative director Igor Sarazinski, he said, Cyberpunk's not dead. And he posted that on Twitter on May 28th. And a lot of people got hyped about that. He's basically now a part of CD Projekt Red's Boston studio, which I just mentioned, working alongside Amantegelo. I'm sorry for butchering his name. The developer who we just mentioned, and other industry veterans like former Blizzard Entertainment lead product manager Dan Hernberg and ex-IO Interactive, that's the Hitman studio, gameplay director Ryan Bernard. So yeah, that's fairly interesting. There was a lot more news that came out of that investors call. Earnings report. VGC's got the story like they always do. Shout outs to VGC, easily the best video game news site in the business right now. Just if you need to read video game news every day, VGC I think is a place to go. That's where I frequently go when my RSS feed kind of dries up and I don't see anything interesting there. I always double check VGC to see if I missed anything, and they've always got your back, I feel like, when it comes to the big stories that kind of matter. All right. According to this VGC post by Tom Ivan, CD Projekt Red says it wants to release major games more frequently. The company has a handful of projects in development. So let's scroll on down here to where it says, who do we get? Oh, CEO Mikhail Nowakowski, who said, we already worked on 2 projects at the same time when we worked on Cyberpunk 2077 DLC, Phantom Liberty, because that was a game-sized project with almost 300 people working on it. And at the same time, we have already been working on Polaris. So we've had an experience of working on more than one project. Of course, if you remember, the launch of Cyberpunk 2077 went over terribly. So they basically was all hands on deck to try and fix that game. And they seem to have pulled it off with some big patches that took probably too long, but eventually did deliver on fixing up that game. The big Phantom Liberty patch really changed a lot more things even, and people seem to be really hyped and really positive on it. So they pulled it around. This is just kind of talking about how they're expecting to kind of work on even more projects, and we'll go through them all in a second. Nowakowski continues, and we are working on more than one project at this time as well. There is Cyberpunk 2 being developed. There is Cyberpunk 2 being developed in Boston. There's Polaris being developed predominantly here in Europe. And obviously we have other projects with other teams like Project Sirius, also in Boston with the Molasses Flood. That's the Flame in the Flood developers. It was like a top-down survival game, and they're working on a Witcher project. And it's unclear what that is, but it's probably going to be kind of smaller in scope, I'm guessing. And then there's the Witcher 1 remake done in cooperation with Canis Majoris. So you can definitely expect us to release more titles, and the cadence of launches is something we definitely plan to increase, although I will obviously not comment on what is the space between the projects time-wise. If we scroll in here, and CD Projekt Red always has like really spiffy looking slides to kind of detail their roadmaps and things for what they're expecting. But if we keep reading the story, Tom does a really good job. Tom Ivan does a really good job of kind of recontextualizing the kind of labor division on this stuff as far as we can see from an external viewpoint. Tom wrote, as of last month, 407 developers were working on Polaris, which is the first entry in a new Witcher trilogy. We got simply just like a teaser image for that one. I think people are believing that it's going to focus on Ciri. At the time of its announcement in 2022, CD Projekt Red said it intended to publish all 3 games in a 6-year period. So that's, a Witcher spinoff and the start of a new Witcher trilogy and Cyberpunk 2. 56 employees are currently working on the Cyberpunk sequel, which is codenamed Orion. 39 are developing Witcher spinoff project Sirius. 20 are working on CD Projekt Red's first original IP, which is codenamed Hadar. And 13 are engaged on other projects. So that's a lot going on. That's at least 3 kind of known quantities, announced games, 1 original IP, which is probably a decade or more out, and then some other projects kind of out there, which could vary in scope. With only 13 people working on them, it's probably very much like conceptual phase. But yeah, that's kind of all the big news that came out of CD Projekt Red's recent, what do they call it? I keep calling it an investor report, but it basically is an earnings report. Yeah. So for investors, same thing, same difference, I guess. Anyways, let's move on. I've got one more story for you that I got to get through here quickly before I get to the next part of my day. This one struck me as an interesting read. This is actually a post on the Amazon Studios or Amazon Games website, which reads, Maverick Games' ambitious vision for a narrative-led open-world driving game. And if you don't know, Maverick Games is being head by an ex-lead from the Forza Horizon team and potentially other members other developers who worked on Forza Horizon games, as well as other LA studios around. That's kind of the gist I got. Let me double-check that. It might not be LA-based. In any way, I know that Amazon Games does have an LA office, and that's why I thought that. But let's get into the story. Like, what is this game that an ex-Forza lead is kind of working on and has partnered with Amazon Studios for? It says here in this, basically a press release, Amazon Games is proud to announce a publishing agreement with Maverick Games to launch the exciting first game from this new studio filled with world-class industry talent. We sat down with Maverick Games studio head and creative director Mike Brown. So it says, this is according to Brown. The quote from Brown says, Amazon has such a broad array of business that enable the company to reach players in a way that really goes beyond what most publishers can offer with services like Prime Gaming, Prime Video, AWS, that's like the backend that everyone's servers work off of, Twitch, and Amazon Music, just to name a few. This is kind of just corporate-y buzzwords and talk of like, hey, this is a great partnership. They're giving us lots of money and there's all these things that we think we're going to leverage. We're probably not because we're just making a video game. And so, outside of AWS, I don't think Prime Video is going to play in. Maybe Twitch integrations and stuff could be a little bit bigger. And so that does matter, right? But like Amazon Music, I don't know. Just throwing in all the big Amazon things in here. Any case, Brown is a long-term veteran of the Forza Horizon series, while at Playground Games and the creative director behind the critically acclaimed Forza Horizon 5, which boasts an aggregate score of 92 on Metacritic. It says that Brown decided to embrace a new challenge, creating an entirely new AAA studio to produce an ambitious new IP that builds on the strengths of his previous experience and the insights he gained along the way to take the genre in new and compelling directions. Brown says, I've been making racing games for nearly 20 years, and I know this community really well. I think there are a lot of fantasies, desires, and motivations that this community has that we have a unique opportunity to deliver on. The article continues, his team at Maverick, currently 62 strong and growing, includes a wide range of talented developers, some of who are former colleagues from his time at Playground Games, and others who have worked on games like Sea of Thieves, Cyberpunk 2077, Call of Duty, and more. Let's move on here. That's just kind of the run-up, and it lets you know, like, the kind of makeup of the studio. So there's other people from Playground Games, there's people from the Sea of Thieves team, people from Cyberpunk 2077, and people who worked on Call of Duty. So an interesting dynamic, an interesting makeup of people who are now out to make an open world driving game. Here's some more details about that. It says, while not ready to provide comprehensive details about Maverick's upcoming game just yet, Brown was willing to shed a little light on his aspirations for this narrative-led open-world driving game. So basically, he's going to have a story, which isn't always a given in like racing sims or even arcade racers, right? You usually just drive around and have fun. In any case, and then when you do get stories, they can be kind of cringy, which can be fun in its own way. But like see Need for Speed and a lot of those EA titles and things. But yeah, in any case. Brown went on to say, lots of great driving games have amazing gameplay, amazing content. But to really cross that bridge, to become a game that people genuinely love, there needs to be that human connection where you actually are rooting for these characters, falling in love with these characters. That, I think, is a place where our game will be able to really differentiate itself from the other titles in the genre. There's nothing about this genre that prevents it from having amazing characters and amazing stories. It's just not really been explored yet. To that end, Maverick Games has tapped the extraordinary talents of one Jamie Britton to serve as the lead writer on this game. Britton is most well known as the co-creator of the BAFTA award-winning British television drama Skins. That is a show I don't know that much about, and honestly something I probably should have looked up before reading the story. But yeah, so it looks like one of Amazon games or Amazon Studios, the next big game is going to be an open world driving game or an arcade racer. So that's exciting. It's different, especially when a lot of people are kind of focusing on like extraction shooters or hero shooters or basically team-based shooters of live service games, where I'm not going to say that this game isn't a live service game because it sounds like it could easily have those hooks for being kind of an open world experience where they're trying to kind of get you to check in all the time and stuff and play with your friends potentially. But it is at least a fascinating thing that Amazon would pick this up, despite there not being a huge, outside of like Forza proper and Gran Turismo, like outside of there not being, I think, and Forza Horizon obviously just sold a ton, like did 1 million in pre-orders, like before it even went up on Game Pass, the last Forza Horizon, I believe, which was cool. And did well, like sales wise. So there's no reason to believe that this wouldn't do well, right? I just picked the story out because I thought it was kind of interesting. Anyway, that's pretty much all I've got time for today. Those are the 3 biggest stories from today, Wednesday, May 29th, that I saw going around. Let me know in the comments if there's another story that you saw that deserves attention in your mind. We obviously had a long day or a long 3-day weekend, so there's stories that kind of happened on Friday that didn't get really kind of reported or contextualized on until today when everybody kind of returned to work and when Sony actually apologized for goofing up that Neil Druckmann interview. Just, I can't believe it, man. I think about that and it just makes me shake my head. It's really frustrating. I think I tweeted out, my tweet about it was something like, I've made a ton of like YouTube thumbnails and titles for years, and even like I would feel largely uncomfortable publishing something like that. That's just completely untrue. And yeah, don't do that. If you're a publisher, don't do that. Definitely don't do it without the permission of the person you've interviewed. Obviously, it's not like they worked on this statement together, but it seems very clear that in the case of that Neil Druckmann story, that somebody trying to like gas up investors made all of these different quotes about all of the different things that they wanted to highlight in this crazy presentation that they put on, that Sony put on. And so just made up a bunch of stuff from like their most prolific creator. It's just like the amount of mistrust, I think that's bred not only for your audience, not even only for the investors who are trying to impress, but for your essentially your coworker or your very high valued employee is just nuts. So anyways, that's the 3 stories for today. And maybe we'll do this again. If people like it, let me know. If not, I'll keep trying to find different ways to make content quickly while trying to do all the other stuff that I'm trying to get done. All right. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Excuse me.